The dusty road stretched endlessly before her, each step kicking up little clouds that clung to the hem of her threadbare dress. Jessica Morgan clutched her battered suitcase, all she had left in this world at 26. Behind her, the bus that had dropped her at this forgotten crossroads rumbled away, leaving nothing but exhaust and silence. Whispers followed her from town to town. The woman who lost everything in the fire, the charity case, the one whose fiancé disappeared when her family fortune turned to ash. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The small hand-painted sign read, "Welcome to Silvercreek, Montana." The welcome was the last thing Jessica felt as she surveyed the single dirt road lined with weathered buildings. The August sun beat down mercilessly, making the distant mountains shimmer like a mirage. This wasn't where she'd planned to rebuild her life, but the teaching position advertised in the newspaper had promised room and board along with a modest salary. For someone starting from nothing, it was a lifeline she couldn't ignore. Jessica shifted her suitcase to her other hand, wincing as the handle dug into her palm. Her once soft hands were growing calloused with each passing day of her new reality. 6 months ago, she'd been planning her wedding to Daniel, her parents beaming with pride. Now they were gone, along with the family home and the life she'd known. "You look lost," a voice called out, startling Jessica from her thoughts. An elderly man peered at her from the porch of what appeared to be the town's general store, his weathered face creased with curiosity rather than suspicion. "I'm looking for the schoolhouse," Jessica replied, her voice stronger than she felt. "I'm the new teacher." The man's eyebrows shot up. "Ah, you'd be Miss Morgan then. Wasn't expecting you till tomorrow." He descended the steps with surprising agility. "Name's Walter Jenkins. I run the store and the post office, such as it is." "Pleased to meet you, Mr. Jenkins." Jessica extended her hand, painfully aware of how it trembled slightly. "School's at the end of town, but Emma's not there today. She's out at the Blackwood Ranch." Walter scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Could take you out there myself, but these old bones don't much care for horseback these days." Jessica felt her heart sink. "Is it far? I could walk." Walter's laugh cut her off. 10 miles through open country? Not unless you're part mountain lion, miss." As if sensing her distress, Walter's expression softened. "Don't you worry now. Maddie Blackwood's in town with her daddy. They can give you a ride back to the ranch." Before Jessica could respond, the door to the general store swung open, and out bounded the smallest whirlwind Jessica had ever seen. A little girl, no more than 7 or 8, with unruly copper curls and a face full of freckles, stopped short when she saw Jessica. "Are you the new teacher?" the child asked, eyes wide with wonder. Jessica couldn't help but smile. "I am. My name is Miss Morgan." "I'm Maddie Blackwood. I'm gonna be in your class." The excitement in her voice was contagious. "I've been practicing my letters all summer so I can be the best reader." "I'm sure you will be," Jessica replied, finding herself genuinely charmed by the child's enthusiasm. A small whine drew Jessica's attention downward. Peeking out from behind Maddie's skirts was the tiniest puppy she'd ever seen, a ball of golden fluff with oversized paws. "That's Scout," Maddie announced proudly. "He picked me at the shelter. Daddy says that's how you know someone belongs to you, when they pick you right back." Jessica knelt down, offering her hand to the puppy who sniffed it cautiously before giving her fingers a tentative lick. "He likes you," Maddie declared, her face lighting up. "Scout doesn't like everyone. He's picky." "Well, I'm honored." Jessica laughed, the sound surprising her. When was the last time she'd laughed? It felt rusty, unpracticed. "Maddie, what did I tell you about letting Scout off his—" The deep voice stopped abruptly. Jessica rose quickly, smoothing her travel-wrinkled dress. The man standing in the doorway of the general store was tall enough that he had to duck slightly to clear the frame. His face was partially shadowed by a worn cowboy hat, but she could make out a strong jaw darkened with stubble and eyes the color of a summer storm. "Daddy, this is Miss Morgan." She's our new teacher and Scout likes her. Maddie was practically bouncing with excitement. The man studied Jessica with an intensity that made her want to look away, but something in her refused to break the gaze. She'd had enough of looking down, of apologizing for existing in spaces where she no longer belonged. "Jack Blackwood," he said finally, extending a hand calloused from work. His grip was firm but gentle. Maddie's father and chairman of the school board, for what that's worth in a town this size. "Jessica Morgan," she replied, struck by how small her hand looked in his. "I'm grateful for the opportunity." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, at her formal tone. "Emma, that's my sister. She's been handling the school duties along with running the ranch since our last teacher left. She'll be relieved to have help. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story." "I look forward to meeting her," Jessica said politely, though her stomach clenched at the thought of more new faces, more judgment. In her experience, small towns had long memories and quick tongues. "Miss Morgan doesn't have a way to get to the ranch, Jack," Walter interjected. "Thought maybe you could give her a ride when you head back." Jack glanced at Jessica's single suitcase, his expression unreadable. "That all you brought?" He crept up Jessica's neck. "It's all I have," she admitted, lifting her chin slightly. She wouldn't be ashamed. Not anymore. For a long moment, Jack said nothing, just studied her with those storm cloud eyes. Then Maddie tugged at his hand, breaking the silence. "Can she ride with us, Daddy? Please. Scout already decided he likes her." A ghost of a smile touched Jack's lips. "Well, if Scout's made up his mind, I suppose that settles it." He turned to Jessica. "We're leaving in about an hour once I finish loading supplies. There's a cafe next door if you want to get something to eat." Jessica nodded, relief washing over her. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood." "Jack," he corrected. "Nobody calls me Mr. Blackwood except the banker when he's trying to get me to take out another loan." His dry humor caught her off guard, and a small smile escaped before she could stop it. Jack's eyes widened slightly, as if her smile was something unexpected. "Come on, Miss Morgan." Maddie grabbed Jessica's free hand. "I'll show you the cafe. Mrs. Peterson makes the best pie in 3 counties. Before Jessica could protest, she was being pulled along by the enthusiastic child, the puppy trotting at their heels. She glanced back to see Jack watching them, his expression thoughtful. The cafe was a small, homey place with gingham curtains and the rich scent of coffee and baked goods. The few patrons turned to stare when Jessica entered, their curiosity undisguised. "That's Miss Morgan," Maddie announced to the room at large. "She's our new teacher, and Scout likes her." The introduction, simple as it was, seemed to satisfy most of the onlookers, who offered friendly nods before returning to their conversations. A plump woman with silver-streaked hair emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Well, hello there. I'm Doris Peterson. Welcome to Silvercreek." Her smile was genuine, her handshake firm. "You sit yourself down. You look like you could use a good meal." "I can pay," Jessica said quickly, reaching for the small coin purse in her pocket. Doris waved her off. "First meal's on the house. Town tradition for newcomers." Jessica wanted to argue but found herself being guided to a table by the window, Maddie chattering away beside her. Within minutes, a plate of golden fried chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans was placed before her, along with a tall glass of sweet tea. "Eat up now," Doris encouraged. "You're too thin by half." The first bite nearly brought tears to Jessica's eyes. It had been so long since she'd had a home-cooked meal, longer still since she'd eaten without counting every penny spent. As she ate, Maddie regaled her with stories about Silvercreek, the ranch, and, most importantly, her puppy Scout. "Daddy found him in a box by the road," Maddie explained, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Someone just left him there all alone. Daddy says only cowards abandon those who depend on them." Jessica's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Jack Blackwood was starting to sound like a more complex man than she'd initially assumed. "How long have you and your father lived at the ranch?" she asked, trying to redirect her thoughts. Forever, Maddie replied with the certainty of childhood. But it was different before Mommy went to heaven. Daddy doesn't smile as much now. The innocent observation pierced Jessica's heart. She knew all too well how grief could reshape a person, carve them into something barely recognizable. "I'm sorry about your mother," she said softly. Maddie nodded solemnly. "Aunt Emma says it's okay to be sad sometimes, but we have to remember the happy things too. Like how Mommy used to sing while she baked cookies, and how she could whistle so loud she could call the horses from way across the pasture." Jessica smiled at the memory shared so freely. "She sounds wonderful." "She was," Maddie agreed. "Daddy has her picture by his bed. He thinks I don't know, but I see him talking to it sometimes." Before Jessica could respond to this painfully intimate revelation, the cafe door opened, and Jack entered, his tall frame filling the doorway. Something in the air seemed to shift with his presence, as if the very molecules rearranged themselves around him. "Ready to head out?" he asked, his eyes taking in Jessica's half-eaten meal. "Unless you need more time." "I'm finished," Jessica said, though her stomach protested the lie. She'd learned to eat when food was available, but pride wouldn't let her make him wait. Doris appeared with a paper bag. "Taking the rest for the road," she announced, brooking no argument. "And some cookies for the journey. Can't have our new teacher fainting from hunger before she even starts." The kindness, unexpected and unasked for, made Jessica's throat tight. "Thank you," she managed. Outside, a wagon loaded with supplies waited, hitched to 2 sturdy horses. Jack lifted Maddie onto the seat with effortless grace, then turned to Jessica. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to her suitcase. Jessica handed it over, watching as he secured it among the supplies. When he returned, he offered his hand to help her up onto the high seat. His fingers were warm and strong around hers, and for a fleeting moment, Jessica felt something she hadn't in months. Safe. The feeling was as terrifying as it was welcome, settled between Jack and Maddie. With Scout curled in the little girl's lap, Jessica watched as Silvercreek fell away behind them. The landscape opened up before them. Vast plains of golden grass stretching toward distant mountains, the endless Montana sky arching overhead, so big it made her feel insignificant in comparison. "It's beautiful," she murmured almost to herself. "Most people just see emptiness." Jack replied, his voice low. "They miss the life in it." Jessica glanced at him, surprised by the observation. "I grew up in Boston. Everything was buildings and streets and noise. This," she gestured at the sweeping landscape, "this feels like freedom." Something in Jack's expression shifted, a subtle softening around his eyes. "Blackwood Ranch has been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather homesteaded the land, built the house with timber he hauled down from the mountains himself." "That's quite a legacy," Jessica said, understanding now why he'd looked at her single suitcase with such curiosity. How strange she must seem to him. A woman with no roots, no history she cared to share. "It's a burden sometimes too," Jack admitted, surprising her with his candor. "Land needs tending. It doesn't much care if you're tired or heartbroken or scared. It just needs what it needs." The words hung between them, revealing more than perhaps he'd intended. Jessica looked away, giving him the privacy to regather himself. "Miss Morgan, do you know how to ride a horse?" Maddie piped up, filling the silence. Jessica smiled at the child. "I've never had the opportunity to learn." Maddie's eyes widened in disbelief. "Never? But how did you get places?" "We had streetcars and automobiles in Boston," Jessica explained. "And I walked a lot." "Daddy can teach you to ride," Maddie declared with absolute confidence. "He's the best rider in the whole county. Even better than Uncle Liam. But don't tell him I said so." Jack cleared his throat. "I'm sure Miss Morgan has more important things to do than learn to ride, Maddie." "Actually," Jessica found herself saying, "I'd like to learn." If I'm going to live here, I should know how, shouldn't I? Jack's glance was quick, assessing. It's not easy. Takes patience. I have plenty of that, Jessica replied. What she didn't say was that patience had been forced upon her. Patience with condescending bank managers, explaining why her family's assets were gone, patience with former friends who suddenly had no time for her, patience with her own shattered dreams. The journey continued, with Maddie's chatter filling most of the silence. Jessica learned about the ranch, the 26 horses, the cattle, the chicken coop where Maddie collected eggs every morning, and the vegetable garden that Aunt Emma fusses over like they're her babies. Gradually, the terrain began to change, the open plains giving way to gentle rolling hills dotted with pine trees. They crossed a shallow river, the water sparkling in the afternoon sun, and followed a winding dirt road that climbed steadily upward. Almost home, Jack said, the first words he'd spoken in nearly an hour. They crested a hill, and Jessica's breath caught in her throat. Below them stretched the Blackwood Ranch, a large two-story house of weathered wood and stone, surrounded by various outbuildings, corrals, and pastures where horses grazed peacefully. Beyond it all, the mountains rose majestically, their peaks still holding patches of snow despite the summer heat. "What do you think?" Maddie asked eagerly. "It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen," Jessica answered honestly. As they approached, a woman emerged from the house, shading her eyes against the sun. Even from a distance, Jessica could see the family resemblance, the same strong jawline as Jack, though her features were softer, more rounded. Jack brought the wagon to a stop in front of the house, setting the brake before jumping down. He reached up to lift Maddie, then turned to offer Jessica his hand. The moment her feet touched the ground, Scout wriggled free from Maddie's arms and circled Jessica's ankles, his tail wagging furiously. "Well, I'll be the woman." "Emma," Jessica presumed, said as she approached. "Scout doesn't take to strangers. You must have a good heart." Before Jessica could respond, Maddie burst in with her usual enthusiasm. "Aunt Emma, this is Miss Morgan. She's our new teacher, and she's never ridden a horse. But Daddy's going to teach her, and Scout picked her just like he picked me." Emma laughed. A warm, genuine sound. "Slow down, Maddie. Let the poor woman catch her breath." She extended her hand to Jessica. "Emma Blackwood, I'm so glad you're here. When we didn't get any responses to our advertisement for months, I was beginning to think I'd be teaching and ranching forever." "Jessica Morgan," she replied, immediately warming to Emma's friendly manner. "I'm grateful for the opportunity." "You're a godsend is what you are," Emma declared. "Now come inside. You must be exhausted after your journey." As Emma led the way, with Maddie skipping ahead, Jessica became acutely aware of Jack behind her, his presence like a physical force. She'd met many powerful men in her former life. Bankers, lawyers, businessmen who wore their influence like expensive cologne. Jack Blackwood's power was different. It was in the quiet confidence of his movements, the steadiness of his gaze, the way he seemed completely at home in his own skin. The interior of the house was surprisingly spacious, with high ceilings and large windows that filled the rooms with natural light. The furniture was solid and well-made, if not fashionable, and everywhere were touches that spoke of a home rather than just a house. Handmade quilts draped over chair backs, bookshelves filled with well-worn volumes, wildflowers arranged in mason jars. "The schoolhouse is about a half-mile from here," Emma explained as she showed Jessica to a bedroom on the second floor. "It's small but has everything you'll need. Most of the children ride or walk from the surrounding farms and ranches. We have 12 students total, ages 6 to 14. The bedroom was simple but comfortable. A double bed with a patchwork quilt, a wooden dresser, a small writing desk beneath the window that overlooked the mountains. This was our mother's sewing room," Emma said softly. "I hope you'll be comfortable here." "It's lovely," Jessica replied, overwhelmed by the sudden kindness after so many months of hardship. "I don't know how to thank you." Emma waved away her gratitude. "Having you here is thanks enough. I love the children, but teaching was never my calling the way ranching is." She hesitated, then added, "Jack said you traveled light. If you need anything, clothes, books, whatever, just ask. We take care of our own here." "Our own!" The words echoed in Jessica's mind long after Emma left her to settle in. Was that what she was now? One of their own? It seemed impossible that she could belong anywhere again, let alone here in this beautiful, wild place so far from everything she'd known. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the land, Jessica stood at her window, watching as Jack moved among the horses in the corral, his movements sure and practiced. Maddie trailed after him, Scout at her heels, and even from a distance, Jessica could see the gentle way Jack lifted his daughter to pet one of the horses, his hand steady on her back. There was a story here, in this man and his daughter, in the sister who had stepped in when needed, in the community that welcomed a stranger based on nothing more than the fact that she was their new teacher. Jessica had come to Silvercreek with nothing but a suitcase and the desperate hope of rebuilding some semblance of a life. She hadn't expected to find a place that already felt more like home than Boston had in the months after her parents' death. A soft knock at her door pulled Jessica from her thoughts. She opened it to find Maddie, her copper curls damp from a recent bath, Scout cradled in her arms. "Aunt Emma says dinner's ready," the child announced, "and Scout wanted to make sure you didn't get lost." Jessica smiled, touched by the transparent excuse. "Well, we can't have that, can we? Thank you for coming to get me." As she followed Maddie down the stairs, Jessica found herself wondering what tomorrow would bring. For the first time in months, the uncertainty didn't fill her with dread. Instead, she felt the faintest stirring of something she'd thought lost forever: hope. Dinner was a lively affair around a large oak table in the kitchen. The food was simple but delicious: roast beef, potatoes, fresh vegetables from Emma's garden. The conversation flowed easily, with Emma asking about Jessica's teaching experience and Maddie interjecting with stories of her own adventures. Jack was quieter, but Jessica often felt his eyes on her, watching, assessing. Miss Morgan used to live in Boston, Maddie informed her aunt between bites. "And she's never ridden a horse." "Is that so?" Emma asked, her eyes twinkling. "Well, you've come to the right place to learn. Jack's been riding since before he could walk." "Maddie's already volunteered my services," Jack said dryly, but there was no real annoyance in his tone. "I wouldn't want to impose," Jessica began, but Emma cut her off with a wave of her hand. "Nonsense. Everyone here needs to ride. The schoolhouse is close enough to walk, but if you want to go anywhere else, you'll need a horse. Besides," she added with a meaningful glance at her brother, "Jack could use something to focus on besides work." Jessica caught the look that passed between the siblings. Emma's determined, Jack's resigned. There was history there, unspoken but palpable. After dinner, as Emma and Maddie cleared the table, Jack stepped onto the back porch. Without quite knowing why, Jessica followed him. The night was clear, the sky a tapestry of stars, unlike anything she'd ever seen in Boston. "It's overwhelming at first," Jack said without turning. "The sky out here makes you feel small." Jessica moved to stand beside him at the railing. "Yes, but not in a bad way. More like a reminder that my problems aren't as big as they seem." Jack glanced at her then, really looked at her, as if seeing past the travel-worn clothes and careful reserve to something underneath. "What brings someone like you to a place like this, Jessica Morgan?" The use of her full name, spoken in his deep voice, sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. "Someone like me." "You don't belong here," he said, not unkindly. "Anyone can see that. Your hands have never worked a day of hard labor. Your speech, your posture. You were raised with money, with education. What happened?" The directness of the question should have offended her, but there was no judgment in his tone, only curiosity. And perhaps something else. Recognition from one wounded soul to another. "My parents died," Jessica said softly, the words still painful to speak aloud. "There was a fire. They didn't make it out." She took a deep breath. "Afterward, I discovered my father had made some poor investments. The house, the business, everything was mortgaged to the hilt. When the creditors were done, there was nothing left." Jack was silent, his profile sharp against the starlit sky. "My fiancé decided he wasn't interested in marrying a penniless orphan," Jessica continued, a bitter smile touching her lips. "My friends suddenly had no room at their dinner tables. I took what jobs I could find, but Boston it has a long memory. Everyone knew who I was, what I'd lost. This teaching position was a chance to start over somewhere new, somewhere my past doesn't matter." Your past always matters, Jack said quietly. It's what shapes you. Jessica turned to face him fully. Then what shaped you, Jack Blackwood? What ghosts do you carry? For a moment she thought she'd gone too far, crossed an invisible boundary. Jack's jaw tightened, his eyes darkening like the sky before a storm. Then, almost imperceptibly, his shoulders relaxed. My wife died 3 years ago, he said, each word measured, careful. Childbirth. We lost the baby too. I'm so sorry, Jessica whispered, the inadequacy of the words burning in her throat. Jack nodded once, accepting her sympathy without comment. Emma moved back from Denver to help with Maddie. I don't know what I would have done without her. She seems remarkable, Jessica offered. A ghost of a smile touched Jack's lips. She is, stubborn as a mule and twice as opinionated, but remarkable. He glanced back toward the house. She worries about me. About Maddie. Thinks we need more? Jessica suggested when he didn't continue. Jack's eyes found hers in the darkness. Something like that. The moment stretched between them, fragile and charged with unspoken understanding. Then Scout's bark from inside broke the spell, followed by Maddie's laughter. I should get her to bed, Jack said, straightening. Morning comes early on a ranch. As he turned to go, Jessica found herself reaching out, her fingers lightly touching his arm. Thank you for bringing me here, for giving me this chance. Jack looked down at her hand on his arm, then back to her face. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. Thank you for coming, he said simply. Maddie needs someone who isn't broken. Before Jessica could respond to the raw honesty of his words, he was gone, leaving her alone with the vast Montana night and the dawning realization that Silvercreek might be more than just a place to hide from her past. It might be where she finally found her future. Dawn broke over Silvercreek with golden fingers of light stretching across the landscape. Jessica woke to the unfamiliar sounds of a working ranch. Roosters crowing, the distant nickering of horses, the low voices of ranch hands beginning their day. For a moment, disorientation gripped her. The simple room with its patchwork quilt was nothing like her Boston bedroom with its silk curtains and mahogany furniture. Then memory returned. This was her life now. Silvercreek, the Blackwood Ranch, a fresh start. She dressed quickly in one of her few remaining good dresses, navy blue, with small white buttons down the front. It was simple but respectable, appropriate for her first day as Silvercreek's new teacher. After pinning her hair into a neat bun, Jessica made her way downstairs, following the scent of coffee and bacon. The kitchen was alive with activity. Emma stood at the stove, flipping pancakes with practiced ease while instructing a young ranch hand about fence repairs needed in the north pasture. Maddie sat at the table, carefully pouring syrup over her breakfast, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. Scout dozed at her feet, occasionally opening one eye when a morsel of food came too close to the edge of the table. Jack was nowhere to be seen. Good morning, Jessica said, hesitating in the doorway. Emma turned with a warm smile. There you are. I was beginning to think you'd sleep through your first day. Coffee. Before Jessica could answer, a steaming mug was pressed into her hands, and she was gently guided to a seat at the table. Did you sleep well? Emma asked, placing a plate of pancakes and bacon before her. Better than I have in months, Jessica admitted. The bed had been firm but comfortable, the night sounds soothing rather than disturbing. Miss Morgan, are you excited about school today? Maddie asked, her face sticky with syrup. I got my new slate pencils already, and Aunt Emma ironed my special dress. Jessica smiled at the child's enthusiasm. I'm very excited, and a little nervous, she added honestly. You'll do wonderfully, Emma assured her, joining them at the table with her own plate. The children have been looking forward to having a proper teacher again. I did my best, but teaching 12 children of different ages while trying to run a ranch was challenging. I can imagine, Jessica murmured, taking a bite of pancake. It was delicious, light and fluffy, with just the right amount of sweetness. These are wonderful, Emma looked pleased. Family recipe. Our mother taught me. She glanced at Maddie. And someday I'll teach this little rascal, if she can stay still long enough. Maddie giggled, then suddenly perked up. "Daddy!" Jessica turned to see Jack entering through the back door, his shirt damp with sweat, dust clinging to his boots. He'd clearly been working for hours already. "Morning," he said, his eyes briefly meeting Jessica's before moving to his daughter. "Ready for school, Princess?" Maddie nodded eagerly. "Miss Morgan is nervous, but I told her not to worry because everyone will love her, just like Scout does." A hint of amusement flickered in Jack's eyes as he poured himself coffee. "Scout's a good judge of character." Jessica felt heat rise to her cheeks under his gaze. There was something disconcerting about Jack Blackwood, something that made her feel simultaneously seen and unsettled. "The schoolhouse is ready," Emma told Jessica. "I aired it out yesterday and made sure there were fresh supplies. Jack will take you and Maddie over after breakfast." "I can find my way," Jessica began, not wanting to impose. "Nonsense," Emma said firmly. "Besides, the school board chairman should officially introduce the new teacher on her first day." Jack raised an eyebrow at his sister but didn't argue. Instead, he disappeared upstairs, returning minutes later in a clean shirt, his hair damp from a quick wash. The walk to the schoolhouse took them along a well-worn path through a meadow bright with late summer wildflowers. Maddie skipped ahead, Scout bounding at her heels, while Jessica and Jack followed at a more sedate pace. "She's excited," Jack observed, watching his daughter. "She talks about you constantly. Miss Morgan this, Miss Morgan that. You've made quite an impression." "She's a wonderful child," Jessica said sincerely. "You and your wife did a good job." Pain flashed across Jack's face, there and gone so quickly Jessica might have imagined it. "Clara did the hard part. I'm just trying not to ruin what she started." Before Jessica could respond, they crested a small hill, and the schoolhouse came into view. It was a simple, one-room building with a small bell tower and freshly painted white clapboards. Several children were already gathered in the yard, their excited voices carrying on the morning air. "Here we are," Jack said, his voice taking on a more formal tone. Silvercreek's pride and joy, small as it may be. As they approached, the children fell silent, eyes wide as they took in the newcomer. Jessica felt a momentary panic. What if they didn't accept her? What if she couldn't live up to their expectations? Then, Maddie turned, her face alight with pride. "Everyone, this is Miss Morgan. She's our new teacher, and she's from Boston, and she's never ridden a horse. But my daddy's going to teach her, and Scout likes her, which means she's special." The introduction, delivered in one breathless rush, broke the tension. Several children giggled, and a boy about Maddie's age stepped forward. "Does she know about fractions?" Mrs. Blackwood always gets confused with fractions. Emma had obviously shared her teaching struggles with the children. The honesty of it made Jessica smile. "Yes, I know about fractions," she assured him, "and geography and history and how to diagram a sentence." The boy looked impressed. "Even the complicated ones with lots of parts?" "Even those," Jessica promised. Jack cleared his throat, drawing the children's attention. "Miss Morgan comes to us highly recommended. I expect you all to show her the same respect you'd show any adult in this community. Understood?" A chorus of, "Yes, Mr. Blackwood," followed his words. And Jessica was struck by the natural authority he commanded without raising his voice or making threats. "The key is under the mat," Jack told Jessica quietly. "If you need anything, send one of the older children to the ranch. I'll come by at the end of the day to walk you and Maddie home." The offer surprised her. "You don't have to do that. I'm sure I can find my way." Something that might have been a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "It's not about finding your way, Miss Morgan. It's about mountain lions." Jessica's eyes widened. "Mountain lions?" Now he was definitely smiling, a rare expression that transformed his face. "Welcome to Montana." With that, he tipped his hat and strode away, leaving Jessica to face her first day as Silvercreek's teacher. The day passed in a blur of introductions, assessments, and establishing routines. The children ranged from 6-year-old Timmy Fisher, who was just learning his letters, to 14-year-old Abigail Carson, who had a keen mind for mathematics and dreams of attending college someday. Despite their varied backgrounds and abilities, all 12 students shared a hunger for knowledge that touched Jessica deeply. These children valued education in a way her wealthy Boston students never had. To them, learning wasn't an obligation but a privilege. When the final bell rang, Jessica found herself both exhausted and exhilarated. As promised, Jack appeared at the schoolhouse door, Maddie rushing to greet him with tales of her day. "Miss Morgan taught us a new song, and she knows all about dinosaurs, and she didn't even get mad when Billy spilled ink on the floor." Jack's eyes met Jessica's over his daughter's head. "Sounds like a successful first day." "It was," Jessica agreed, gathering her books. "They're wonderful children, eager to learn, respectful. A teacher couldn't ask for more." Something in Jack's expression softened. "They've been waiting a long time for someone like you." The simple statement warmed Jessica more than it should have. As they walked back to the ranch, Maddie's chatter filled the comfortable silence between them. The days fell into a rhythm after that. Each morning, Jessica would wake to the sounds of the ranch, share breakfast with Emma and Maddie, and sometimes Jack when he wasn't already out working, then walk to the schoolhouse to teach. In the afternoons, Jack would appear to escort her and Maddie home, those walks becoming a quietly anticipated part of Jessica's day. It was during one such walk, about 2 weeks after her arrival, that Jack mentioned the riding lessons. "Emma thinks we should start tomorrow if you're willing," he said, his tone carefully neutral. "Saturday morning, when you don't have school." Jessica had almost forgotten Maddie's enthusiastic volunteering of her father's teaching skills. "I wouldn't want to take up your time. I'm sure you have more important things to do." Jack glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Everyone here needs to ride," like Emma said. "It's not a luxury. It's a necessity." "Then I'd be grateful for the lessons," Jessica replied, understanding that his offer was practical rather than personal. Maddie, who had been examining a butterfly on a nearby flower, rejoined them with excitement. "You're going to love riding, Miss Morgan." "It's like flying, but better because you can talk to your horse and they listen sometimes." Jessica laughed at the child's description. "That sounds wonderful, though I hope my horse is patient with beginners." "Daddy will give you Willow," Maddie declared confidently. "She's the gentlest mare in the whole stable. That's who I learned on." Jack nodded in confirmation. "Willow's a good choice. Meet me at the corral after breakfast tomorrow. Wear your sturdiest shoes and bring gloves if you have them." The next morning dawned clear and cool, a perfect September day. Jessica dressed in her plainest skirt and blouse, grateful that Emma had loaned her a pair of sturdy boots better suited to ranch life than her city shoes. Breakfast was a lively affair, with Maddie barely containing her excitement about Jessica's first riding lesson. Emma kept shooting, knowing glances between Jessica and Jack, which Jessica steadfastly ignored. After helping clear the dishes, Jessica made her way to the corral, where Jack was already waiting. He stood with a beautiful, dappled gray mare, gently stroking her neck as he spoke softly into her ear. The sight stopped Jessica in her tracks. This was a different Jack than the one she usually saw, his posture relaxed, his expression open as he communed with the animal. For a moment she felt like an intruder witnessing something private. Then Jack looked up, his features composing themselves into their usual reserved expression. "Ah, there you are. Come meet Willow." Jessica approached cautiously, eyeing the large animal with a mixture of awe and trepidation. "She won't bite," Jack assured her, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Hold your hand out, palm flat, and let her smell you." Jessica did, as instructed, her breath catching as the mare's soft muzzle brushed against her palm. "Hello, Willow," she whispered. "Good." Jack nodded approvingly. "Now stroke her neck, just like this." He demonstrated with long, smooth strokes. Horses can sense fear or uncertainty. If you're nervous, she'll be nervous. Taking a deep breath, Jessica placed her hand on Willow's neck, marveling at the warmth and power she could feel beneath the sleek coat. "She's beautiful." "She is," Jack agreed, something like pride in his voice. "Raised her from a foal. Her mother was my father's favorite mare." "Another family legacy," Jessica observed. Jack's eyes met hers, surprised and perhaps pleased by her understanding. "Yes, exactly." The next hour passed in a blur of instruction. How to approach a horse, how to lead it, the proper way to hold the reins, how to mount and dismount. Jack was a patient teacher, his instructions clear and concise, his hands steady when he needed to adjust her posture or grip. When Jessica finally sat atop Willow, the ground seeming impossibly far away, she felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. "Now what?" she asked, her voice higher than usual. Jack's hand rested reassuringly on Willow's neck. "Now we walk. Slowly. Just around the corral. Get used to the feeling of moving together." Under his guidance, Jessica and Willow completed several circuits of the corral. With each round, Jessica felt her confidence grow, her body beginning to understand the rhythm of the horse's movements. "You're a natural," Jack said when they finally stopped, genuine approval in his voice. The unexpected praise brought heat to Jessica's cheeks. "I had a good teacher." Something passed between them then, a current of understanding that had nothing to do with horses. Jack looked away first, clearing his throat. "Same time next Saturday? If you're interested in continuing." "I'd like that," Jessica replied softly. As the weeks passed, Jessica settled more deeply into life at Silvercreek. Her students thrived under her attention, her riding skills improved with Jack's weekly lessons, and the Blackwood house began to feel like home in a way no place had since her parents' death. Emma became a trusted friend, sharing the ranch's history over cups of coffee in the evenings, teaching Jessica to bake bread in the big kitchen on rainy Sundays. Maddie attached herself to Jessica like a shadow whenever school wasn't in session, her bright chatter and unconditional affection a balm to Jessica's wounded heart. And Jack remained an enigma. Some days he was almost warm, sharing stories of his childhood as they walked back from the schoolhouse, his eyes crinkling at the corners when something amused him. Other days he retreated behind walls so high Jessica wondered if she'd imagined the connection between them. October brought the first frost, painting the landscape with crystalline beauty. It also brought the Harvest Festival, a tradition Emma explained with barely contained excitement. "The whole community comes together at the town hall," she told Jessica as they prepared dinner one evening. "There's dancing, food, a small auction to raise money for the church roof. It's the social event of the season." "It sounds lovely," Jessica said, slicing apples for a pie. "You'll need a proper dress," Emma continued, her tone suspiciously casual. "I have one that should fit you with minor alterations." Jessica looked up, surprised. "That's very kind, but I couldn't possibly." "Nonsense," Emma interrupted. "It's just gathering dust in my closet. Besides," she added with a mischievous glint in her eye, "it's the perfect color to bring out the green in your eyes." Before Jessica could question Emma's sudden interest in her appearance, Maddie burst into the kitchen, scout at her heels. "Miss Morgan, Daddy says to tell you he's ready for your riding lesson if you still want to go today." The lesson wasn't scheduled until tomorrow, but Jessica nodded, wiping her hands on a towel. "Of course. I'll be right there." Emma raised an eyebrow but said nothing as Jessica hurried out. She found Jack in the corral, saddling not just Willow, but a large black gelding as well. "I thought we might try something different today," he said by way of greeting. "If you're comfortable with it, we could ride out beyond the corral. See some of the ranch?" The offer surprised her. Their lessons had been strictly confined to the safety of the corral until now. "I'd like that," Jessica said, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. Jack's mouth quirked in what might have been a smile. "Let's see how you do mounting up first." To Jessica's delight, her body remembered the movements they'd practiced. She settled into the saddle with growing confidence, adjusting her skirts as best she could. "Well done," Jack acknowledged, swinging effortlessly onto his own horse. "Remember, keep your heels down and your back straight. Willow knows the trails, so you don't need to guide her much. Just enjoy the ride." They set off at a walk, passing the barn and outbuildings before following a trail that wound up into the hills behind the ranch. The afternoon sun bathed everything in golden light, the autumn leaves a blaze of red and orange against the evergreens. "It's breathtaking," Jessica murmured, taking in the panoramic view as they climbed higher. Jack glanced at her, something warming in his usually guarded eyes. "This is my favorite spot on the ranch. My father used to bring me up here when I was a boy, said a man needed perspective sometimes to see how his small piece fit into the larger picture." "Your father sounds like a wise man," Jessica observed. "He was," Jack agreed. "Hard-working, fair-minded. The kind of man who judged others by their actions, not their circumstances." He paused, then added quietly, "He would have liked you." The simple statement touched Jessica deeply. "I wish I could have met him." They continued in companionable silence until they reached a small plateau overlooking the entire valley. Jack dismounted, then moved to help Jessica down. His hands encircled her waist, strong and sure as he lifted her effortlessly from the saddle. For a moment after her feet touched the ground, he didn't step away. Jessica looked up to find his eyes on her face, searching for something she couldn't name. "Why did you really come to Silvercreek, Jessica?" he asked, his voice low. "You could have gone anywhere. Boston has schools. Any city would hire a teacher with your education." The question caught her off guard. "I told you, I needed a fresh start." Jack shook his head slightly. "There's more. I can see it in your eyes sometimes, when you think no one's looking. You're not just running from something. You're hiding." Jessica stepped back, his perception cutting too close to the bone. "We're all hiding something, aren't we? Even you, Jack Blackwood." A muscle tightened in his jaw. "What am I hiding?" "That you're still in love with your wife," Jessica said softly. "That you're afraid to let anyone else in because it might dishonor her memory. That you use this ranch, this land, as a shield to keep the world at bay." She expected anger at her boldness. Instead, something like respect flickered in Jack's eyes. "You see a lot for someone who's only been here a month." "I pay attention," Jessica replied simply. Jack turned away, gazing out over the valley where the ranch buildings looked like toys in the distance. "Clara was everything to me," he said finally. "When she died, it was like someone ripped out half my soul. If it hadn't been for Maddie." He trailed off, then continued more firmly. "A man doesn't recover from that kind of loss. He just learns to live with it." Jessica moved to stand beside him, close but not touching. "My mother used to say that grief is the price we pay for love. The deeper the love, the higher the cost." Jack glanced at her. "Your mother sounds like she was a wise woman too." "She was." Jessica smiled sadly. "She also said that hearts are remarkably resilient organs. They break, but they heal. Different perhaps, scarred maybe, but still capable of beating, still capable of feeling." The silence between them was heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Jack turned to face her fully. "Emma told me about the Harvest Festival," he said, changing the subject. "She's probably already strong-armed you into attending." Jessica laughed softly. "She might have mentioned it." "Would you—" Jack hesitated, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "Would you save me a dance?" The request, so unexpected from this reserved man, made Jessica's heart skip. "I'd be honored. Though I should warn you, it's been a while since I've danced." Something like a smile touched Jack's lips. "It's been a while for me too." As they rode back to the ranch, the setting sun painting the sky in brilliant hues of pink and gold, Jessica found herself wondering if perhaps they were both learning to step out from behind their shields. Just a little. The thought was as terrifying as it was exhilarating. The night of the Harvest Festival arrived crisp and clear, stars pricking the velvet sky like diamonds. Emma's dress fit Jessica perfectly after a few adjustments. Deep emerald green silk that rustled pleasantly when she moved, and, as Emma had predicted, brought out the green in her hazel eyes. "You look beautiful," Emma declared, as she helped Jessica with the final buttons. "Doesn't she, Maddie?" Maddie, resplendent in her own new dress of sky blue, nodded enthusiastically. "Like a princess in a storybook," Jessica smiled at the child's innocent compliment. "And you look like a perfect little lady," Maddie beamed, twirling to make her skirt flare out. "Daddy said I look just like Mommy in the picture by his bed." Emma's eyes met Jessica's over Maddie's head, something sad and hopeful mingling in her expression. Before either could speak, a knock sounded at the bedroom door. "Are you ladies about ready?" Jack's deep voice called. "The wagon's waiting." Emma opened the door with a flourish. "What do you think, big brother? Doesn't our teacher clean up nicely?" Jack stood frozen in the doorway, his eyes fixed on Jessica. He was dressed in what was clearly his best suit, his hair neatly combed, his face freshly shaved. The overall effect was striking. "You look," he began, then seemed to lose his train of thought. "That is, the dress is—" "Thank you." Jessica saved him, a blush warming her cheeks under his intense gaze. "You look very handsome yourself." Maddie giggled, breaking the tension. "Daddy's wearing his fancy boots. He only wears them for special occasions." Jack cleared his throat, offering his arm to his daughter. "Shall we go, Princess? We don't want to be late." The town hall was transformed for the occasion. Paper lanterns hung from the rafters, casting a warm glow over tables laden with food. A small band played in one corner, and couples already swirled across the makeshift dance floor. As they entered, Jessica was immediately struck by the sense of community. Everyone seemed to know everyone else, greeting each other with genuine warmth and interest. To her surprise, many people approached her as well, parents of her students thanking her for her teaching, others introducing themselves and welcoming her to Silvercreek. "Told you they'd love you," Emma whispered as they made their way to a table where Doris Peterson was serving her famous apple cider. The evening progressed in a whirl of introductions, conversations, and laughter. Jessica found herself pulled into the community's embrace with unexpected ease. These people, with their work-roughened hands and honest faces, accepted her without question, valuing her for what she contributed rather than for her family name or social standing. It was a revelation. When the band struck up a lively reel, Maddie tugged at Jessica's hand. "Come dance with me, Miss Morgan." Jessica allowed herself to be led onto the dance floor, where she and Maddie joined a circle of dancers. The steps were unfamiliar, but Jessica followed along as best she could, laughing when she made a mistake, her heart lighter than it had been in months. As the music ended, she found herself face to face with Jack, who had been dancing with Emma in the same circle. "I believe you promised me a dance," he said, offering his hand as the band began a slower waltz. Jessica placed her hand in his, her pulse quickening as his other hand came to rest lightly at her waist. "So I did." They moved together with surprising grace, Jack leading confidently, Jessica following as if they had danced together 100 times before. "You dance very well for a cowboy," she teased gently. A smile touched Jack's lips. "My mother insisted all her children learn, said it was a necessary social skill, even in the wilds of Montana." "She was right," Jessica replied, acutely aware of his hand at her waist, the warmth of his palm against hers. "You're good for this place," Jack said abruptly, his eyes serious. "For the children. For Maddie." The unexpected praise made Jessica stumble slightly. Jack's arm tightened around her, steadying her before she could fall. "Sorry," she murmured, "and thank you. That means a lot, coming from you." Jack's gaze held hers, something unspoken passing between them. "Jessica, I—" "Jack Blackwood, you old scoundrel!" A booming voice interrupted whatever Jack had been about to say. A large man with a silver-streaked beard clapped Jack on the shoulder. "You've been holding out on us!" No one said the new teacher was such a beauty. Jack introduced Jessica to the newcomer, an old friend named Henry Wilson who owned the neighboring cattle ranch. The interruption broke the intimate moment, and soon Jessica found herself being claimed for dances by other men in the community. Fathers of her students, unmarried ranchers, even the elderly town doctor, all took turns leading her around the dance floor. Throughout the evening, she was aware of Jack's eyes following her. Whenever their gazes met across the crowded room, something unspoken passed between them, a current of understanding that made her heart beat faster. As the night wore on, Jessica stepped outside for a breath of fresh air. The autumn evening was crisp, the stars impossibly bright in the vast Montana sky. She wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders, savoring the quiet after the festive noise inside. "Too much excitement?" Jack's voice came from the shadows. He stepped forward, his tall figure outlined in the soft light, spilling from the town hall windows. Jessica smiled. "Just catching my breath. Everyone has been so welcoming." "Silvercreek takes care of its own," Jack said, moving to stand beside her. "And you've become one of us faster than anyone I can remember." "Is that a good thing?" she asked, studying his profile in the dim light. Jack turned to face her fully. "For Silvercreek?" "Absolutely. For you?" He hesitated. "I'm not sure yet." "What do you mean?" Quote, he gestured vaguely toward the town hall. "These are good people, but this is a small life compared to what you must have known. Teaching in a one-room schoolhouse, living on a ranch miles from the nearest city. I wonder if someday you'll wake up and realize what you've given up." The concern in his voice touched her. "Jack, I've never been happier than I've been these past weeks. In Boston, even before I lost everything, my life was constrained. Here, I feel like I can breathe." Something in Jack's expression softened. "Emma says the same thing. She tried city life in Denver for a few years, came back saying the mountains were calling her home." "I understand that now," Jessica said softly. "There's something about this place. It gets under your skin." Jack nodded, looking out at the star-filled sky. "My great-grandfather felt it too. Crossed half a continent to stake his claim here. Said the land spoke to him, told him this was where he belonged." "And do you feel that way too?" Jessica asked. "I never questioned it," Jack admitted. "This land, this ranch, it's in my blood. I can't imagine being anywhere else." He paused, then added quietly, "But sometimes I wonder if that's enough." Before Jessica could respond, the town hall door opened, releasing a burst of music and laughter. Maddie appeared, her eyes lighting up when she spotted them. "There you are! Aunt Emma says it's time for the auction, and you promised to help, Daddy." She bounded over, Scout following at her heels. The puppy had been a hit at the festival, charming treats from nearly everyone present. Jack nodded, placing a gentle hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Duty calls," he said to Jessica, something like regret in his voice. Jessica smiled. "Go. I'll be in shortly." As Jack and Maddie returned to the hall, Jessica remained in the starlit darkness, her thoughts swirling like leaves in an autumn wind. There was something growing between her and Jack, something fragile yet persistent. But was it real, or merely the product of shared loneliness? And what of Clara's ghost, the beloved wife whose memory still haunted the quiet corners of the Blackwood Ranch? Scout's soft whine drew her attention. The puppy had stayed behind, sitting at her feet, his warm eyes gazing up at her with what seemed like understanding. "What do you think, Scout?" she whispered, kneeling to scratch behind his ears. "You picked me, remember? But did you pick me for this place, or for something more?" Scout's only answer was to lick her hand, then turn expectantly toward the town hall where the sounds of the auction were beginning. Jessica laughed softly. "All right, I'm coming." The weeks following the Harvest Festival brought changes to Silvercreek. The days grew shorter, the nights colder. The first snow dusted the mountains, a harbinger of the winter to come. At school, Jessica began preparations for the Christmas program, assigning parts and organizing rehearsals with an enthusiasm that infected her students. At the ranch, the pace of work intensified as Jack and the hands prepared for the harsh Montana winter. Firewood was stacked, outbuildings repaired, livestock moved to sheltered pastures. Emma preserved the last of the garden's bounty, filling the root cellar with jars of vegetables, fruits, and jams. Through it all, Jessica found her place. She no longer felt like a visitor or a temporary addition to the ranch. She belonged, not just as the town's teacher, but as part of the Blackwood household. Her riding lessons with Jack continued, though they'd moved into the barn as the weather turned. Their conversations during these sessions grew deeper, more personal, the barriers between them gradually lowering. It was during one such lesson, as Jessica brushed Willow's coat while Jack repaired a bridle nearby, that he asked about her fiancé. What was he like, the man who let you go when times got hard? The question, coming after a comfortable silence, startled her. Daniel? Jessica paused, the brush hovering over Willow's flank. He was charming, well-educated, from a good family. She resumed brushing, her strokes perhaps a bit firmer than necessary, the perfect match, according to Boston society. Jack's hands stilled on the leather he was mending. But not according to you? Jessica considered the question, realizing she'd never really examined her feelings about Daniel before his abandonment made them moot. I thought I loved him, she said slowly. Now I wonder if I just loved the idea of him, the security, the social standing, the neat path my life would follow. And when that path disappeared, so did he. Jessica shrugged, surprised to find the memory no longer painful. 2 days after the fire, he called at my aunt's house where I was staying, returned my grandmother's ring. Said it would be unfair to both of us to continue our engagement under the altered circumstances. Jack made a sound of disgust. Coward. Yes, Jessica agreed, a smile touching her lips at Jack's fierce assessment. But in a strange way, I'm grateful to him now. If he hadn't shown his true colors then, I might never have found the courage to leave Boston. I might never have come here. Their eyes met across the dim barn, the air between them charged with unspoken emotions. Jack set aside the bridle and moved toward her, his steps deliberate, his gaze never leaving her face. Jessica, he began, his voice low and rough with feeling. The barn door burst open, letting in a swirl of snow and a breathless Maddie. Daddy, Miss Morgan, Aunt Emma says come quick. Scout found something in the north pasture. The urgency in the child's voice broke the moment. Jack turned immediately. What is it, princess? A puppy, or maybe a wolf cub. Scout found it in the snow. It's really small and making funny noises. Aunt Emma says it might be hurt. Jack was already reaching for his coat. Show us. They followed Maddie through the swirling snow to the ranch house, where Emma knelt by the fireplace, a small bundle cradled in a towel on her lap. Scout circled anxiously, whining softly. He led Maddie straight to it. Emma explained as they entered. Poor thing was half frozen, must have been separated from its mother. Jessica joined Emma by the fire, peering at the small creature. It wasn't a puppy or a wolf cub, but a fox kit, its red fur matted with ice and mud, its tiny body trembling despite the warmth of the fire. Will it live? Maddie asked, her voice small with worry. Emma exchanged a glance with Jack. I don't know, sweetie. It's very young to be alone. And the cold. Jessica reached out tentatively, stroking the kit's head with one finger. Its eyes, barely open, were cloudy with exhaustion and fear. It needs milk, she said, and warmth. I'll get milk from the kitchen, Maddie volunteered, dashing off before anyone could respond. Jack crouched beside them, his expression grave, as he examined the tiny animal. It's a wonder it survived at all. The temperature dropped below freezing last night. Scout found it for a reason, Emma said firmly. This little one deserves a chance. The next hours were a lesson in patience and hope. Jessica showed Maddie how to feed the kit with an eyedropper Emma found in her sewing basket. Jack fashioned a small box lined with soft cloths that they placed near the fire, but not too close. Scout appointed himself guardian, curling protectively beside the box, his warm body providing additional heat. As night fell, the household settled into a vigil. Emma retired to her room after extracting promises that they would wake her if anything changed. Maddie fought sleep valiantly but eventually succumbed, curled in her father's lap in the large armchair by the fire. I should put her to bed, Jack murmured, looking down at his daughter's peaceful face. Jessica nodded, checking the fox kit once more. Its breathing seemed steadier, though still shallow. I'll watch over them, she promised, gesturing to the fox and Scout, who hadn't budged from his post. When Jack returned, he found Jessica seated on the floor beside the makeshift bed, her back against the sofa, her eyes fixed on the tiny bundle of fur. Without a word, he joined her, their shoulders touching as they shared the silent watch. "Thank you," he said after a while. "For today. For Maddie. She's sensitive about animals, gets too attached." Jessica smiled softly. "It's a beautiful quality, that capacity for compassion." "Clara was the same way," Jack said, his voice quiet in the firelit room. "Always bringing home strays. Birds with broken wings, feral cats, once even a raccoon with a damaged paw. Said every creature deserved kindness." "She sounds like she was a remarkable woman," Jessica said, meaning it. Jack was silent for a long moment. "She was," he finally agreed. "The best person I've ever known. When she died, I thought that was it for me. That I'd spend the rest of my life just going through the motions for Maddie's sake." Jessica turned to look at him, finding his profile etched in firelight and shadow. "And now?" His eyes met hers, vulnerability plain in their depths. "Now I'm not so sure." The simple admission hung between them, weighted with possibility. Before either could speak again, a soft whimper came from the box. They both turned to see the fox kit stirring, its tiny paws pushing at the blankets. "It's fighting," Jessica whispered. "It wants to live." Jack's hand found hers in the dim light, his fingers warm and strong as they entwined with her own. "Sometimes life surprises you that way," he said softly. "Just when you think it's over, something new begins." They stayed that way through the night, hands joined, watching over the small creature that had brought them together in this moment of shared vigil. When dawn broke, the fox kit was still alive, its breathing stronger, its movements more purposeful. "A fighter," Jack declared when Maddie came bounding down the stairs at first light. "Just like someone else I know." His eyes met Jessica's over his daughter's head, a message in them that made her heart skip a beat. Something had shifted between them in the night. A door opening that had previously been locked tight. The fox kit, whom Maddie promptly named Rusty, became the newest addition to the Blackwood household. Under their care, it grew stronger each day, eventually regaining enough health to be released back into the wild come spring. Though Maddie extracted promises that they would always leave food out in case it wanted to visit, December brought heavy snows that blanketed the ranch in pristine white. The schoolhouse closed for 2 weeks over Christmas, giving Jessica time to help with preparations for the holiday. She and Emma baked cookies, strung popcorn garlands, and decorated the large pine tree Jack and 2 ranch hands dragged into the parlor. On Christmas Eve, the house filled with the scents of roasting turkey, pine needles, and cinnamon. A fire crackled in the hearth, candles glowed in every window, and a sense of peace settled over the ranch like a blanket of freshly fallen snow. After dinner, they gathered in the parlor to exchange gifts. Emma received a beautiful new shawl from Jessica, handmade gloves from Jack, and a carefully painted rock from Maddie. "Because you always say you need paperweights for your desk, Aunt Emma." Quote, closing parenthesis dot. Jack opened a new leather-bound journal from Emma, a hand-knitted scarf from Jessica, her first attempt, with only a few minor mistakes, and a drawing from Maddie of their family, including Jessica, Emma, Scout, and Rusty, all standing before the ranch house. Jessica found herself blinking back tears when she unwrapped Emma's gift, a beautiful dress of deep blue wool perfect for the Montana winter. "I can't accept this," she protested. "It's too much." "Nonsense," Emma insisted. "I've been saving that fabric for something special. You're family now, whether you like it or not." Family. The word wrapped around Jessica's heart like a warm embrace. Maddie's gift was next, a carefully constructed bookmark with pressed wildflowers. "I saved them from last summer," the child explained proudly. "Aunt Emma helped me press them." "It's beautiful," Jessica said, genuinely touched by the thoughtfulness. "I'll use it every day." Finally, Jack handed her a small, carefully wrapped package. Inside was a delicate silver locket on a fine chain. When she opened it, she found a tiny painted miniature of the Blackwood ranch house. "Jack," she breathed, running her finger over the exquisite detail. It's perfect. Open the other side, he urged quietly. Jessica carefully opened the opposite side of the locket to find a minute portrait of Maddie, Scout at her side, both painted with remarkable skill. "Where did you get this done?" she asked, amazed at the craftsmanship. "Mrs. Holloway's son in Helena is an artist," Jack explained. I sent him a sketch and description. "It must have cost a fortune," Jessica protested weakly. Jack's eyes held her steadily. "Some things are worth it." After Maddie had been tucked into bed, still buzzing with excitement about Santa's imminent arrival, Jessica found herself alone with Jack on the porch. Despite the cold, the night was beautiful. Stars glittering like diamonds in the velvet sky, the snow-covered landscape bathed in silver moonlight. "Thank you again for the locket," Jessica said, her hand going to where it rested against her collarbone. "It's the most thoughtful gift I've ever received." Jack leaned against the porch railing, his breath forming clouds in the frosty air. "I wanted you to have something to remember us by. If—" he hesitated. "If you ever decide to leave." The statement caught Jessica off guard. "Leave? Why would I leave?" Jack's expression was hard to read in the moonlight. "Spring will come. The roads will clear. You might want to find a teaching position in a larger town. Somewhere with more opportunities." "Is that what you want?" Jessica asked, her heart suddenly pounding in her chest. "For me to leave?" "No," Jack said, the word coming out rough and honest. "That's the last thing I want." He turned to face her fully, his eyes serious in the silvery light. "But I don't want to hold you back either. You're young, educated. You could have a different life than this." Jessica stepped closer, drawn by the vulnerability in his voice. "Jack Blackwood, are you trying to give me an escape route?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Maybe. Is it working?" "Not even a little," Jessica replied, her voice soft but firm. "I've found something here I never had in Boston. Not even before I lost everything. I've found a place where I belong." Jack's hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch gentle as a whisper. "And with whom do you belong, Jessica Morgan?" The question hung between them, laden with meaning. Jessica's heart thundered in her chest as she placed her hand over his. "I think you know the answer to that." For a moment, Jack seemed frozen, his eyes searching hers as if looking for any sign of doubt or hesitation. Finding none, he lowered his head slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. Jessica rose to meet him, her eyes drifting closed as their lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home after a long journey. His arms encircled her, drawing her closer as the kiss deepened, years of loneliness and pain melting away in the warmth they created between them. When they finally parted, Jack rested his forehead against hers, his breathing uneven. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," he confessed, his voice rough with emotion. "After Clara, I believed that part of my life was over." Jessica reached up to touch his face, tracing the strong line of his jaw. "We can't replace what we've lost," she said softly, "but maybe we can build something new, something different but equally precious." Jack nodded, his eyes suspiciously bright in the moonlight. "I'd like that," he whispered. "Very much." The new year brought changes to the Blackwood Ranch. As winter's grip slowly loosened, as the days grew incrementally longer, Jessica found herself part of a family again, not as a guest or an employee, but as someone essential to the fabric of their lives. Jack courted her properly, despite Emma's teasing that it was hardly necessary given that Jessica already lived under their roof. He brought her wildflowers that had pushed through the melting snow, took her on rides to his favorite spots on the ranch, carved a small wooden horse that he presented with bashful pride one evening after dinner. For Jessica, who had known the practiced gallantry of Boston society men, Jack's straightforward gestures held a sincerity that touched her deeply. He was not a man who spoke easily of his feelings, but his actions. The way his hands sought hers during their evening walks, the tender look in his eyes when he thought she wasn't watching, the quiet conversations by the fire after Maddie was asleep, told her everything she needed to know. Maddie accepted the changing relationship between her father and teacher, with the uncomplicated joy of childhood. "Scout knew all along," she declared when Jack finally sat her down to explain. "That's why he picked Miss Morgan that very first day." By April, the snow had retreated to the highest peaks, and the ranch burst into vibrant life. Green shoots pushed through the dark earth, calves wobbled on new legs in the pastures, and wildflowers carpeted the meadows in a riot of color. It was on a perfect spring day, with the air sweet with promise, that Jack asked Jessica to marry him. He took her to the plateau where they had first truly opened up to each other, where the entire valley spread before them like a painting. There were no flowery speeches, no grand gestures. Just Jack, suddenly on one knee, a simple gold ring in his calloused palm, his eyes more vulnerable than she had ever seen them. "I'm not a poetic man," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion written on his face. "I can't promise you an easy life or luxury or any of the things you might have had in Boston, but I can promise you this. I will love you honestly and completely for the rest of my days. I will work these hands raw to give you and Maddie the best life I can. I will stand beside you through whatever comes, good or bad." He took a breath, his eyes never leaving hers. "Jessica Morgan, will you marry me? Will you make this ranch your home, not just for now, but forever?" Tears blurred Jessica's vision as she knelt before him in the spring grass. "Yes," she whispered, her heart so full it seemed impossible to contain. "Yes to all of it." The ring slid onto her finger, a perfect fit. Later, Jack would tell her it had been his grandmother's, passed down through generations of Blackwood, the women. For now, though, words gave way to a kiss that sealed their promise, witnessed only by the mountains and the endless Montana sky. The wedding was set for June, when the ranch would be at its most beautiful. News spread quickly through Silvercreek, bringing a flurry of well wishes and offers of help. Emma threw herself into preparations with characteristic energy, determined that her brother and the woman who had become like a sister would have a day to remember. 2 weeks before the wedding, as Jessica and Maddie picked wildflowers for wedding decorations, Scout suddenly abandoned his usual position at Maddie's side. The dog raced toward the long drive leading to the ranch, barking excitedly. "Someone's coming," Maddie observed, shading her eyes against the sun. A cloud of dust on the horizon resolved into a sleek automobile, a rarity in Silvercreek, where most people still traveled by horse or wagon. Jessica felt a prickle of unease as the vehicle approached, slowing as it reached the ranch house where Jack and Emma had emerged onto the porch. "Miss Morgan," Maddie tugged at her hand. "We should go see who it is." They crossed the meadow quickly, reaching the house just as a well-dressed man stepped from the automobile. Something about his bearing, his immaculate attire, struck a chord of recognition in Jessica even before she saw his face. "Daniel," she breathed, stopping short at the sight of her former fiancé. He turned at the sound of her voice, his handsome face breaking into a practiced smile. "Jessica, thank God I found you. You've been impossible to track down." Jessica was acutely aware of Jack stepping forward, his posture tense, his eyes wary as they moved between her and the newcomer. "You know this man?" he asked quietly. "This is Daniel Bradford," Jessica said, her voice steadier than she felt. "My former fiancé." Daniel's smile faltered slightly at the word former, but he recovered quickly. "A misunderstanding, surely." "Jessica, my dear, we have so much to discuss." He glanced dismissively at the Blackwoods. "In private, if possible." Emma placed a protective hand on Maddie's shoulder. "Come on, sweetie, let's go check on those cookies in the oven." As they disappeared into the house, Jack remained, his presence solid and reassuring at Jessica's side. "Anything you have to say to Jessica, you can say in front of me," he said, his voice level but with an unmistakable edge. Daniel's eyebrows rose. "I see. Well, this is rather awkward." He turned his attention back to Jessica. "I've come to bring you home, my dear, to Boston. The situation has changed. My father has connections at the bank. We've managed to recover some of your family's assets. Not everything, of course, but enough to restore you to society." Jessica stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. "You broke our engagement. You returned my grandmother's ring. You said—" "I know what I said," Daniel interrupted smoothly. "I was hasty, shocked by the circumstances, but I've had time to reconsider." His gaze flickered to Jack, then back to Jessica. "Surely you don't intend to bury yourself in this wilderness forever? You're a Morgan. You belong in Boston, with people of your own kind." Something cold and hard settled in Jessica's stomach. "People of my own kind," she repeated, the words tasting bitter on her tongue. "You mean people who abandoned me when I had nothing? People who cared more about my family's money than about me?" Daniel had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Jessica, be reasonable. You've had your adventure. It's time to come home." "I am home?" Jessica said firmly, her hand finding Jack's beside her. His fingers closed around hers, warm and strong. "This is where I belong now." Daniel's gaze dropped to their joined hands, his expression hardening. "I see. Well, perhaps I should have mentioned that your aunt is quite ill. She's been asking for you." The mention of her aunt, her only remaining family, hit Jessica like a physical blow. "Aunt Margaret? What's wrong with her?" "Consumption, the doctors say." Daniel's voice softened, becoming almost gentle. "She may not have much time left. She'd very much like to see you before." Jessica felt Jack's hand tighten around hers. "Is this true?" he asked Daniel, his voice sharp. "My aunt raised me after my parents died. She's the only family I have left from before." Jack's expression softened. "Then you must go to her." "What?" Jessica stared at him in disbelief. "Jack, the wedding can wait," he finished firmly. "Family comes first, always." Daniel cleared his throat. "I have a compartment reserved on tomorrow morning's train to Chicago, where we'll connect to Boston. I'll collect you at dawn." "I'll drive Jessica to the station myself," Jack countered, his tone brooking no argument. Daniel looked as if he might protest, then seemed to think better of it. "As you wish. Until tomorrow, then, Jessica." With a stiff nod to Jack, he returned to his automobile. As the dust from his departure settled, Jessica turned to Jack, her heart in turmoil. "I have to go," she said, tears threatening. "But I'll come back. As soon as I can." Jack drew her into his arms, holding her as if he might never let go. "I know," he murmured into her hair, "and we'll be here waiting. Maddie, Emma, Scout, all of us." That night, as Jessica packed the few belongings she'd accumulated during her time in Silvercreek, Emma sat on the edge of the bed, her expression troubled. "I don't trust him," she declared. "That Daniel. Something doesn't sit right." Jessica paused in her packing. "What do you mean?" Emma twisted her hands in her lap. "The timing is too convenient. Just before the wedding? And the way he looked at you. Not like a man visiting a sick relative, but like a man claiming a prize." "Daniel always was possessive," Jessica admitted. "But my aunt—" "I'm not saying you shouldn't go," Emma clarified quickly. "Family is family. I just—" She hesitated, then continued firmly. "Don't let him make you forget where you belong." Jessica embraced her soon-to-be sister-in-law. "I could never forget. My heart is here now, with all of you." The next morning dawned clear and beautiful, the kind of perfect spring day that seemed to mock Jessica's heavy heart. Jack was quiet as he drove her to the station, his face set in lines of careful control. Maddie sat between them, unusually subdued, Scout curled in her lap. Daniel was waiting on the platform, immaculate in a traveling suit that must have cost more than a ranch hand's yearly wage. His smile faltered slightly at the sight of Jack, but he recovered quickly. "I've secured your ticket," he told Jessica, producing it with a flourish. "We should board soon to ensure good seats." "In a moment," Jessica replied, kneeling to embrace Maddie. "I'll be back before you know it," she promised the child. "Take care of Scout and Rusty for me." Maddie nodded solemnly. "Scout picked you," she whispered. "He'll wait forever if he has to." Next, Jessica hugged Emma, who had insisted on coming despite the early hour. "Remember what I said," Emma murmured in her ear. Finally, Jessica turned to Jack. In public, he was typically reserved, uncomfortable with displays of affection. But now he pulled her into his arms without hesitation, holding her tightly against his chest. "I love you," he said, his voice low and fierce. "Nothing changes that. Not distance, not time, not fancy men in automobiles." Jessica laughed through her tears. "I love you too. I'll write every day." "All aboard!" The conductor's call echoed across the platform. Daniel stepped forward. "We must go, Jessica." With one last look at the three people who had become her family, Jessica allowed Daniel to escort her onto the train. As it pulled away from the station, she pressed her hand against the window, watching until Jack, Emma, Maddie, and Scout were nothing but tiny figures in the distance, then gone altogether. Only then did she notice Scout's small figure, racing alongside the train for as long as his legs could carry him, refusing to let her go until the train's speed finally outpaced him. "Loyal creature," Daniel observed with mild distaste, though rather undisciplined. "I can't imagine your aunt allowing dogs in the house." Jessica said nothing, her thoughts still with the family she was leaving behind. As the Montana landscape rolled past the window, she fingered the locket at her throat, opening it to reveal the tiny portrait of Maddie and Scout, the miniature painting of the ranch house. "Home. It won't be long," Daniel said, misinterpreting her silence. "2 days by rail, and you'll be back in civilization, back where you belong." Jessica closed the locket, holding it tight in her palm. "We'll see about that," she murmured, too softly for him to hear. "We'll see." Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.